Welcome, esteemed viewers, to today's video discussing the art of running a West Marches campaign in Dungeons & Dragons. The West Marches is a style of play first coined by Ben Robbins in 2007. In a West Marches campaign, players embody bold adventurers who venture out from Central Hub into the uncharted wilderness, uncovering new locations and discovering ancient ruins and forgotten treasures. It's expected to be a sandbox experience, where players must decide what they'd like to do in advance, so the Dungeon Master can prepare, but there is more to running a West Marches than just that. The big thing that differentiates West Marches from normal play is that these sessions typically don't have a regular playtime. There's also not a regular party. Each game has different players, drawn from a pool that could consist from anywhere from 10 to 15 or 16 players perhaps. And there isn't typically a regular plot. As I said before, it's a sandbox, and the flip side to playing a sandbox is that the story doesn't typically develop or evolve. The players choose what they want to do and where they want to go, hopefully giving the Dungeon Master enough time to plan and prepare it in advance. Giving your players agency to dictate their choices can be pretty fun, if the choices you give them are fun in themselves. These three things are typically the main points used to describe a game like this, but these are not the only ones. The other points are: the players share a world map that could be potentially unreliable or lack information. Competition between players is actively encouraged to bring people to the table and get them going after magical items and other treasure. And content is loosely tiered, meaning that lower level areas are closer to town and more dangerous areas for higher levels of play are further away. Bit like an MMORPG, I guess, in that regard. I think the style of play is pretty cool, and I definitely encourage tables where schedule conflicts regularly happen to actually try this out. All you really need to get started as a Dungeon Master is a basic world map with a few regions and locations that surround the hub. The hub itself, likely a large town or city, should give the players access to anything and everything that they could need, from armor to potions to scrolls to weapons to any other equipment like climbers kits that the party may need to traverse the nearby cliffs. Making this location interesting with taverns and NPCs is optional, but I recommend it as it would give your players the opportunity to practice their role playing without there being too much pressure or control, like it would be in a normal campaign. I found this map online and it's pretty straightforward. And I definitely always recommend using hex grids for your maps, so you can actually track the party's movement. You can also use random encounter charts full of various monsters appropriate for the terrain and biome that the party are travelling through, in order to pose a very real danger and threat to the players. I honestly love random encounter charts over using like set piece encounters that are pre-prepared, especially for things like this. I think playing a few sessions and games in a West Marches world will actually teach you to be a better Dungeon Master, because you don't really have as much control as you normally would do in a standard game. And this means that you're reacting more than your players are to things that are actually happening, which is great, honestly. It's teaching you improv, which is a really, really useful skill to know as a Dungeon Master, something that is very underappreciated and understated. So give it a try. I ran a West Marches game around 6 months ago for my players, where I was testing out some new rules and getting my players situated with the new setting that I was planning to run for campaign 2. Funnily enough, it was the Barrow Maze that I'm running now, so I let my players make some low-level adventures to head out into the Barrow Moors and look for crypts to loot. I had a pool from the 3 groups that I had at the time, which consists, I think it was about close to 16 players. A pretty big pool, all things considering. And whilst I didn't always give my players a lot of options in what they could do, they still found it, really, really fun, and it was still a West Marches in many ways. My players explored, they fought monsters, they found treasure, and those who survived gained experience and leveled up. The big thing in these kinds of games is that typically each session is self-contained, right? Meaning your players don't need to join every session in order to have a good gaming experience. Gone are the days where you needed to come up with some convoluted reason why the party's fighter suddenly arrives in the Forgotten Temple just before the boss fight. What this also does mean is that your session plan needs to be straightforward and appropriate for the amount of hours you're going to be playing on that day. You don't really want to end up going over and finishing halfway through the adventure, so don't prepare too much content and instead allow things to develop more organically. Understanding how to pace your adventures comes with practice, and running one-shots for your players will actually help you grasp how long things typically take. When I prepare a one-shot, I usually write down each thing that I want to happen, like each of the major points of the session, and put a timestamp next to it, representing how long into the session, this should really be happening. This allows me to naturally pace the session without suddenly rushing the party to make up lost time. I think we'll wrap up the video here today, but if you're interested in joining a West Marches game, there are surprisingly quite a few servers out there that run these kind of games on the LFG Reddit under community posts. I personally don't have too much experience with these servers, but I know it is a great way to get into some games without having to dedicate or overcommit to a group. Alternatively, you can always join my Discord, which is linked in the description. Sometimes we have games on that are available for viewers to join. Sometimes they are linear, and other times they are more of a sandbox experience, like a West Marches game. If you've enjoyed the video today, make sure you guys like the video and make sure you're subscribed as well. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys next time on Loki's Lair. Until then.